everyone. We're live. It's another episode of Untangled. And I'm Jen Frazier. I'm the CEO and founder of Firefly Partners. And I've been doing this crazy nonsense I just celebrated 18 years, which is shocking. Running Firefly. I know. Think about the lifetimes that have happened in there. But we started Untangled last year, and we're back in 2026 with a kind of a focus on digital and AI in the social good sector. And really, I'm excited to talk to different folks about kind of AI right now is kind of taking over the world in terms of also what we're talking about and what we're doing. So I thought it'd be good to talk about what that means for us in this sector. So very excited today to have my guest, Aram Fischer, co-founder and CEO of Change Agent, the AI tool built specifically for the social good sector. So when I came up with the title, Tools Built by and for the Social Good Sector, I thought, who better than to have on? Aram, thanks for being here.
Yeah, this is great. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I thought we would start. You could just give people like a thumbnail sketch of, who you are and then sort of how you got here. And we're going to dive into sort of your founder's journey a little bit. But let's just start with sort of like, hey guys, if you don't know me, here I am. But I'm sure lots of folks out there listening to this know who you are, but just a little background would be great.
Yeah, so Aram Fischer. I live in Oakland. I grew up in the Bay Area. This is home. And I actually started out as a documentary filmmaker for the first 10 years or so of my career, which is a great way to learn how to listen. And when the Great Recession hit, I ended up becoming a marketer and then the general manager of a media company that covered the special event industry. And I went back into the film industry for a minute, had an entrepreneurial thing that sadly fell apart when Trump won the first time in the healthcare space. And they decided they needed a rainy day fund more than what I was working on. And then got into political organizing, eventually became a political communications consultant and met Craig Johnson, who's our president, CTO, and co-founder at a Change Agent. And we started this project back in summer of 23.
23. Okay. So this is like, not crazy old in the life of like a platform, but obviously none of this would have been capable, or possible before that years ago.
That's
So we're
prehistory. We're
yeah.
like Paleolithic when it comes to generative AI.
Right.
Back in
2023 is like, what was even happening?
Whoa.
Nothing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about like I want to know about those first conversations when you're in the Paleolithic era. Like Gen AI is like baby, like spec, infant, whatever, not even like mostly a sparkle in people's eyes. Most people had no idea what anyone was talking about. How did you guys come up with what was the genesis there? Like, what was that conversation like? And you're like, yeah, let's build something that's different than what we're already seeing as other tools dominating the landscape. Give us like a thumbnail sketch of what that was like.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you a beautiful yarn about, we were wandering in the desert together and we had this moment of epiphany and we went, generative AI is going to be the thing. And we just knew before everyone else. That's not actually what happened.
Okay.
So we had a very different project that we were working on initially that was rooted in classifier AI, which is one of the older forms of AI that does things like, sorts your junk inbox or junk mail.
Yeah.
For example. And we were essentially trying to do that, but for the large email lists where, you get all these political emails and it turns out that for every million that people send, about 300 people reply. And going through 300 replies is actually really annoying and hard to do. And we were trying to help people sort that and do that better.
Right.
It was like a C- idea, ultimately. Yeah. But as we were building that out, Craig was on a call with Christy Paschal, who was the relational organizing director of Community Change Action at the time.
Okay.
And she said, hey, this generative AI stuff seems like it's going to be a big deal. Could you do that, but for us? And for us, meaning a civil rights organization that cares about social justice, a nonprofit that comes with certain values and needs and requirements. And so we started building for them. They, engaged us in a pilot, and then that grew into a full-fledged business that we sort of publicly launched in the summer of 24.
Summer of 24. Amazing. So that, I don't think there's very many founder stories that like, oh my God, I had this amazing idea for exactly the thing that I ended up doing. It usually is not like, blah, 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 I bumbled through some stuff. And then just like the right circumstances, also again, the right people, different things just happen to show up and like kind of help, guide that path to end up, where it happened. It's sort of like, it's a little bit of luck, a lot of ingenuity, a lot of just like hard work and all that. But so like talk about because we've been having this conversation in different spaces about um, are we at a space where there is opportunity to sort of build by and for. And like obviously you kind of got into this working for a particular organization and became a whole product. What's different now, or do you think it's a different enough landscape, like the tools that are available, those types of things from when you started it, that feels like more possible for people now? Or is it still like cautionary tale? Like I'd just love to know sort of some of the things that the chapters you've been through, and is there anything that's going on right now where I'm just seeing a lot of conversations and a lot of different places about the possibilities that are happening because of the just sort of exponential growth and sort of continual evolution of the platforms
Mhm.
themselves. Like, so early days to now, what are some of the major differences you've seen, and is it really, really different today?
Yeah, I mean, what's possible with the technology is just completely shifted. I mean, and it's the core of just a large language model that you prompt and then you get an output is
Yeah.
still roughly the same, although it's improved leaps and bounds, right?
Right.
The
Right.
models of late 2023 are laughably, they're just not even
Right.
close to what
Right.
we're using today. But even more than just kind of that basic prompt to output experience is how everything else is now connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
connect data, documents, tools, and ultimately what's most important shifted from being sort of the training data and then how the tool was aligned, which is still important, but the sort of balance shifted very much towards can you get your sort of organizational wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and knowledge into the tool that you're using, right?
Right.
Context being the sort of operative word there.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to do work on a given program, can I get my program brief into my tool? If I'm working with people, can I safely use
Mm.
PII so that I can personalize emails or, I don't know, extract data from a sign-in sheet and then download that as a CSV and upload it to my CRM so that I can
Yeah.
do work?
Yeah.
Apologies for the acronyms.
That's okay.
Um,
Most
but
people
I
get,
think that's the main
most
thing
people
that
know those
shifted
ones.
is
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the main thing that I've seen shift is kind of this sort of one trick pony into true enterprise software, where it's
Okay.
more like a Salesforce or another kind of CRM that the
Hmm.
power really comes from how you weave it into the work that you do, including, connecting applications and data and documents.
Cool. And does it feel like, I feel like sort of like I've spent my career helping nonprofits sort of wrestle with these sort of other these SaaS models and these tools that again obviously are not built by folks in the seats. And so there's a lot of like manipulating and layering on top of a foundational structure that doesn't really fit the needs of the orgs. And so there's been like, okay, can we build something better? But what I'm hearing you saying is that even necessary? Or is this, are the AI tools right now, this connective tissue in and of themselves, like, do you need to sort of build a whole different platform at this point? Or is it like shift your thinking away from that and think about like just what you were saying, like you can now just kind of connect a lot of things. So it could be, is it possible to not need to go build a whole new, like someone's like, just don't build another SaaS product, like don't do these things that, but I don't know what, I'm sort of curious where you're seeing the possibilities are for organizations to be like, please, for the love of God, let me get off of Salesforce. I'm tired of supporting Mark Benioff, like whatever, or all
Yeah.
that stuff. What do you kind of in your mind, kind of from your seat and doing this for enough time and watching and like understanding the guts of these tools deeper than most people, what feels possible? Is it like, yes, we need to sort of now use these tools to potentially
Yeah.
build a competitive product, or is that like old school thinking?
Well, so we have built a competitive
Right.
product. So we clearly believe in that theory,
Yeah.
right? Like we
Yeah.
offer enterprise AI to social change
Right.
organizations. And it is possible to do it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not the only organization that's building tools. I think so just to geek out about
Yeah.
like the AI business,
Keep going
especially in
for
the
a
social
second. Yeah.
sector for a second,
Yeah.
there's been kind of two major approaches to building AI companies
Yeah.
since, 23.
Yeah.
One is you are a generalist platform, right? Which is to say you're like a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini that can do lots and lots of things. That's the approach that we've taken.
Yeah.
The other approach is we're going to apply AI to a narrower set of things. we're going to be AI for text editing, like Grammarly, right?
Right.
We're going to be Jasper and do it for creative writing. We're going to, we're going to be Gamma and do it for presentations.
Right.
And some of those companies on either side have been successful. We're part of a cohort of organizations that are what's called verticalized AI.
Hmm.
So there's generalist AI companies in, say, healthcare or finance or construction, and we happen to be the only one who's really doing it in the social sector. So
Okay.
you can come to us and you get a large language model that's really built for social sector work, because social sector work is not generic, right? One size fits all particularly doesn't fit the social sector.
Yeah.
And so when you build for the space, it makes things better, right? That's with the large language model. The next thing that you need to build are connections to the right tools.
Yeah.
So in this space, you have tools that are specific. Like we have many clients that need ActBlue. The vast majority of companies in the world don't need ActBlue integrations. Many
Right.
of ours do. So
Yeah.
we build that out. So if you're thinking about building, I think that's a good place to start. There's a lot of complications in terms of how you serve AI and do that in a robust way to not have
Hmm.
it drop. It's really hard to do it in a cost effective way.
Hmm.
And it's really a testament to, Craig Johnson, my co-founder, CTO president, and his team, that they've managed to do that consistently.
Mm.
The core thing that's special about this moment with AI, and makes it easier to build something even
Hmm.
without having, millions and millions of dollars of investment,
Right.
is open source large language models are just as good as their closed source competitors. So most people have heard about DeepSeek. DeepSeek is just as good as ChatGPT or Claude.
Hmm.
Like they're right in the same category. Certain benchmarks that might be better, certain benchmarks that might be worse, but effectively we're talking about two very excellent platforms. And if you know how to work with the open source large language model, you can basically train its behavior to operate in the way that you want it to. And that's what we've done.
Awesome. So let's just take a hot second because one of the big hot button issues that people talk about obviously is privacy and
Mm-hmm.
this worry about kind of also feeding proprietary information, or like you said, like connecting it to, can you put PAI in it, like what's actually happening. I think there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of fear around it. There's a lot of fear around AI for other reasons, but this is a space that we come up against with folks, is a lot of like, I don't want to hand over the information, even in a you've bought the sort of private, so-called, and I don't know if it's so-called, if it actually is, like, there's a lot of like, I don't really know how private some of these things are and how much we can trust, some of the big companies. How do you work in those spaces to guarantee sort of the opportunity for nonprofits to really, again, like, connect it to your systems, be able to use it to synthesize your data, give you some of those insights, whatever, and ensuring that, like, the organization's connection to maybe their house file isn't going to somehow get compromised?
Yeah, so we obsess over this.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, the very first question, which echoes throughout the entire history of Change Agent, was Christy saying to us, "Can you do, it's generative AI, so it seems like it's going to be a big deal. Can you do that, but for us?"
Yeah.
Right? And because we're all social sector professionals ourselves, like we come out of organizing and advocacy. Like when I was a documentary filmmaker, we were a 501c3.
Hmm.
So we're very, very used to the needs of social sector
Yeah.
organizations. And so where we actually started was mitigating harmful bias, because these systems are trained on the internet. And that means that they encode internet values. And
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but internet values is not something that is like a badge I proudly wear. Like, I'm someone with internet values, like, so we've tried to, we not tried, we have shifted the values of our model
Hmm.
to lean into what we think is better for the social sector.
Okay.
So ideas like inclusion are woven into our model at a very deep level. The privacy one was actually the second one that we realized ultimately was kind of the most important.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons not to trust the mainstream tools. For example, there's a lawsuit that the New York Times brought against OpenAI for copyright infringement and probably other things. Or the judge has an order that's still standing that says ChatGPT can't delete anything, roughly. So if they can't delete anything, that's like one of the most
Right.
important cybersecurity actions. Is if you don't want something to
Right.
be leaked, make it not exist is kind of the best choice, right?
Right.
So you want to retain the least amount of data.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't trust them to do that.
Okay.
You also, with the mainstream tools, you can trust them to be backed by Silicon Valley venture capitalists because they are, which means that their primary, secondary, and tertiary priorities are building shareholder value. And to the extent that they're concerned about maintaining privacy, it has more to do with the bottom line than some kind of moral or altruistic desire to protect your data. We, on the other hand, have no data exploitation in our model whatsoever because we come from the social sector and we're like, why would we steal your data? It belongs to you.
Right.
Crazy idea, right? Like, why? Wait,
What?
you're not going to steal the data? There's so much money to be made.
I know.
So we don't sell data. We don't share data. If you want to delete your data, it goes away when we run our nightly backups. You can do temporary chats. So if you were, say, extracting data from that sign-in sheet I mentioned before, we
Yeah.
actually recommend that you use temporary chats because that data doesn't need to
It just
persist.
gets,
There's
yeah.
no good reason. You
Right.
just need it in a CSV to load wherever you need to load it to,
Right. Yeah.
and that's it, right? So there's a lot of things there that you can do. Also, choosing vendors, whether they're tech vendors or others, who are aligned with your values means there's going to be, you can have trust that they're going to evolve towards you as opposed to away from you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we really care about the environment. We're constantly trying to figure out how to minimize our carbon footprint.
I was going to say, that
We're
was
going
like,
to keep
that's on my
trying to
list
do
as
that.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to keep trying to do that. We're staunchly pro worker. We're going to keep being staunchly pro worker. Like my grandparents met in the labor movement. That's not changing.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I would also say about the that's important about the sort of evolution of those values is a company like Anthropic, which is the parent company of Claude, started out as being kind of the good one,
Mm-hmm.
and they just lost the person who's in charge of I forget his exact title, but basically safety,
Yeah.
and he basically left. And part of his sort of goodbye letter was talking about how hard it is to maintain your values in these companies.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
that's part of why you saw them change their policy around training on user data
Mm-hmm.
from opt-in to opt-out, which is a
Mm-hmm.
huge bait and switch problem. So I
Yes.
think people need to really think deeply about how they choose their AI vendor in particular, because the tools work best when you connect the things that are most sensitive, right? You need your 2024 annual
You
report and your
do.
strategic plan and your PII in there to really get great value. And so you need to trust your vendor very deeply to hand over the keys to those guys.
Yeah. And so when you say someone's got a paid subscription into Change Agent, the wall is not porous. Like it's a concrete wall. Like things are not going out of that sanctioned out
Yeah,
area for that
we're
organization, company, whatever.
exactly. We're what's known as a walled garden. So
Yeah.
you can create connections. So for example, if you're a Gamma user and you want to create a presentation in Gamma, you can load in your API key, which is essentially you saying, hey, change agent, I trust Gamma to take in the information I'm going to send to Gamma because I want
Mhm.
to create the slide copy in change agent, but then have Gamma actually design that. So you can create pathways, you can decide who you're going to lower
Yeah.
the
Open the
gate
door
down
for.
over the
Yeah.
moat for
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in general, everything's completely contained. We're not like a ChatGPT wrapper where there's some API going to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Everything just exists on our servers.
Awesome. So you guys obviously spend a lot of time thinking about exactly all the kind of questions. How are you dealing with that environmental impact? I mean, a data center is a data center. Is there any way to like say can you sort of decide which data centers you use? Is that like
Yeah, of
something that,
course.
yeah. And then you're like, I'm not going to use the ones in Arizona or I'm not going to use the ones. Tell me about, I don't even know anything about the landscape of data centers. I just know that everyone's like freaking out. And then I'm like, hey, guess what? Golf courses really are the biggest culprit or whatever, and cryptocurrencies, they're actually the biggest user of data centers and all these kinds of things. So AI needs the data churning, obviously. So how do you handle that, and how do you handle the sort of environmental impact? You say you're kind of working on that. I'm just curious, like, what does that look like from your seat? How do you combat that? Because I know it's something that you care about. Like, what's the
Yeah, so I think every good environmentalist tries to look at the full supply chain
yes,
because it's possible to just sort of jump in at one point and go like, look, we're
yeah,
green, but further either down or
up
up,
that
downstream
chain?
or upstream, there's some real
Yeah,
problems.
right.
So we try to look at the whole thing. So let's start with the models that we choose. So we work off of open source models that are trained by these companies that provide them open source. And we work really hard to only choose models that are trained carbon neutral or as close to it as possible. And there are companies that are better and worse on this. All tech companies are not equal. And so that's the first thing that we do. And we've used many different open source models, but that has been a consistent part of our methodology for choosing what model to use.
Mhm.
So that's the first one. So the next one is when we're then retraining that model, We actually do that on powerful Apple desktop computers.
Hmm.
So Mac Studio Ultras, very, very
Mhm.
powerful, but it means that we can actually run them off of a green energy.
Yeah.
So we've got solar panels at Craig's house that are, and when possible, charging those computers. And when
Yeah.
those computers are really working hard and producing a lot of heat, he's capturing those in the wintertime to heat his home.
Oh,
So there are choices that you can make like that make a
interesting.
difference. And then
Mm.
in terms of the provider that we use, part of the reason why we choose the server company, the data center, is that they have a bias towards green.
Okay.
We're looking forward to the moment where we've got more purchasing power and can be more demanding and more choosy about like how green is. But another thing that we do is we determine like how we set up our compute resources. So if you're constantly scaling to provide the most powerful experience at absolutely every moment, you're maxing out your energy usage.
Right.
We find ways to opt to like choose um, lighter consumption
Okay.
when we can, and that also enables us to keep it low. So the total on this is that 250 users of our platform equal the energy usage of a refrigerator. So
Gotcha.
if you're
Okay.
the median, or average user of Change Agent on a month to month, week to week, year to year basis, you're using 1/50th of the energy that a refrigerator is using. So it's a very, very light footprint.
Good to know because I feel like I just wanted to address some of these things. I feel like I'm hearing a lot of people like come back to me and have combative, like, well, what about this? What about that? So I'm always like, I need to ask the
Yeah,
expert. So,
I mean, part of the problem with the data center thing is if you look at it in aggregate and you're like, let's pretend that everyone's feeling the impacts equally.
right.
It's kind of not that bad. Like you were saying, we'd be better off addressing golf courses when it comes to water. If we slowed down, transoceanic shipping by a
Yes.
half a mile an hour, it would do far more.
Yeah.
However, the impacts aren't felt equally, and the data centers are being put in places both domestically and abroad where the people who are being hurt are generally poor and marginalized in various ways, and so they
Yes.
end up feeling the brunt. And
Right.
they've, in most cases, already been feeling the brunt. So it's like
Right.
taking water from drought-stricken
And
parts of
being
South
like, no, we're going to put
America
it in the data center. And you're like, wait.
is,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think we need to be specific about how the data centers are being done as well. And
Yeah.
I look forward to there being more regulation around that. I hope that it happens.
I think we know that's probably not going to happen in the next 2.5 years, but whatever. We'll see.
State
We'll see.
level, state level, it can
State
happen.
level can do it. That's good.
Colorado, California, we got this.
Colorado, do this. Okay. Okay. So last notes. I want to end on a high note. So you've been doing this for a while. You got a lot of great clients. I just want to have folks who might be skeptics. I don't know. They're obviously there. I do get the
I'm a
skeptics.
skeptic.
I don't want to use it all. Well, I mean, I'm a healthy skeptic, but like, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
just a couple anecdotes of like things that you're like, these are some of the ways when people, you've obviously tried to take care of like a lot of different back end concerns for people to then allow the use of the, what I think is I think we will all see as a very revolutionary tool and set of tools here to help the average, layperson access and do and create things in ways we can't even imagine at this point. But I don't know if you have like a couple
Hmm.
good stories or
Yeah.
whatever from clients like, hey, when we implement this really changed our X or Y, or we saw this kind of improvement or whatever that are like little
Absolutely.
great stories.
Yeah, I some of them are kind of like, whiz bang and exciting and
Yeah.
frontier and all this kind of stuff, right? But the ones that I actually like the best, I would describe maybe as being beautifully banal.
Yeah.
So a good example is Jess O'Donnell, who's the development director at Family Forward Oregon, which is a relatively small advocacy organization in Portland. Writes personalized thank you notes to her donors, I
Oh,
believe quarterly, and which is a great. It's a best practice. It's a really good thing to do.
absolutely.
Super time consuming.
Oh my God.
So with Change Agent, she's managed to reduce the amount of time it takes her to do a run of these from 40 hours down to 90 minutes. That's 38 and a half
I
hours per
mean,
quarter that, she gets to do, find new
for their
grants
work.
to
Yeah.
apply for the grants, maybe just go home and do whatever,
Hang
be
out with
with
their
loved ones
family.
or
Yeah.
hobbies, a hobby for someone in the social sector. Imagine that.
What?
So, that's one example that I think is really powerful. Another one
Yeah.
is, we have got an advocacy client called Ole, New Mexico,
Mhm.
Organizers in the Land of Enchantment. And
Oh,
using Change Agent, they were able to reduce the the amount of time it took for them to do their C4, their political
Yeah.
activities, so much in the 2024 cycle that they were able to do a bunch of their C3 work as well. And they managed to get a housing measure passed in, I think it was Albuquerque, in part
Right.
because they had more time to do other things. So we're seeing those kinds of solutions usually being the most valuable,
Yeah.
but we also do really fancy stuff. Like we connect to a database for our partners at State Voices, which enables people to more rapidly query SQL databases, which is not
Mhm.
something that I know how to do. So what we can do now is you write in natural language and say, ask whatever question you want in just English. It translates that into SQL. That SQL calls then run by your SQL tool, in their
Right.
case BigQuery. It returns the answer, and then I can ask my next question. And now
Yeah.
I've saved a bunch of data, scientist time. They can do higher order, better work. I can
Right.
get my answers, and then I can just send them the SQL call that was run so they can tell me what happened. So the trick with everything to do with AI is you just have to invest enough to think through your workflows and go,
Yes.
is this a good AI use case? Because it might not be,
Right.
right? It might have too much human judgment in it. Like I
Right.
was talking to a housing discrimination nonprofit a couple of days ago. There are certain parts of their flow that just are human judgment through and through. That's it. And
Never
there's
had it.
other
Yeah.
ones where there's some tedium where AI really can come in and help a lot. So that's a
Those are
that's
good.
some so when you go through the workflow, I think you really can figure out like, okay, this is how we're going to weave AI into it.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical thing too for skeptics who are either like, oh, this is going to, take people's jobs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a huge advocate of it's not going to take jobs. It's going to help us do jobs differently and also help, again, take some of the tedium, hopefully take some of the tedium out that helps us actually utilize this thing in here that's the best computer
Hmm.
that I will be to do things again that are that human element where you need judgment or empathy or these other sort of emotive qualities in a human that are really never going to make it into these hopefully never going to make it
Yeah,
and
I think that's happening, and I also think it's getting easier. There was a time where prompt engineering was everything, and
yeah,
people had these long 1,000-word prompts to
huge
get what they
prompt.
wanted. We, because of how much better and sort of smarter in quotes, these models have become, we can do 10-word prompts and get absolutely incredible outputs. If you have your data attached, right? Like if you
Right.
are drawing on a document, 10 words might be enough of a prompt for you to at least kick it off.
Yeah.
And so the barrier to entry is actually coming down.
Hmm.
And the other thing that we do that I think is particularly exciting is that we're really focused on collaborative AI usage.
Hmm.
So multi-organization instances. So
Yeah.
like in New Mexico, there's multiple advocacy orgs sharing an instance, which means they can share knowledge with each other.
Oh.
It's like a shared drive, and shared Google Drive, but far better because you can leverage it to do
Yes.
different things in
Yes.
that space together.
Oh.
Also, to be able to be in a space where you're prompting at the same time and you can see each other's prompts.
Oh my God.
One thing that we're really encouraging people to do is whenever you have a strategic conversation, make sure that you're on a recorded call. On that call, take the transcript, load it into the tool, and generate your talking points or your proposal or whatever it is that you've
Yeah.
been
Yeah. Yeah.
working on. It's
Yeah.
an amazing flow.
I mean, that is the magic right there that I've definitely landed on that and I capitalize on that a lot. I have this like, it's my language, like I'll come out of these calls and I'll be like, this is our transcript. This is our language. This is our original content. Now sort of like craft and, help change this, but it's not creating something out of whole cloth. Like it's not
Yep.
taking something from somewhere else. It's like, help me kind of generate the best ideas out of this conversation that we talked out. So I'm like, that's not to me. A lot of people have this weird like it's cheating or it's whatever. And I'm like, if you just go in and say, hey, go write me an article about blah, and it's like kind of going out and like scraping and then pulling something in, maybe that's a little cheating. Yes, but then if you're like, I have put in a draft and I want it to sort of tighten it up for me or make it whatever. Or you've got conversations, transcripts from calls, like all these kinds of things that you do. And then you want to sort of tease out and bring those ideas up and sort of fill that in and make it just sound a little better than I'm not a great writer. I'm a great talker. I'm not a great writer. So I
It's true
definitely
for
love
most of
that.
us.
I love that space of like, great, help me kind of make this sound like the articulate, amazing, brilliant person that I am when I can't actually craft those words myself all that well from scratch. But I can sure talk about it. Lots of really awesome, great ideas in this call. I really appreciate you kind of digging into some of the hard questions that people have been noodling with and wrestling around in terms of like when do they get in, what are the stoppers. I think the social good sector is particularly skeptical because a lot of the distrust of big corporate folks who've been running these tools and a lot of mistrust that's happened over the years. And I'm excited that you guys have stepped into this space, really taken a big leap forward in helping the social sector see what's possible when we do take that leap out there of like building tools for and by folks who care about this space. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing and continuing on
Thank
this
you.
journey. Appreciate it. So obviously folks can find Change It really easy. And then if people want to get in touch with you, I'm sure they can find you in 1,000 places online, but just to, if people want to carry on the conversation or see more about your platform, I'm sure, have lots of ways to be found out there in the world, and we'll put them in the
Yeah,
blog
please.
after.
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn, where I think this is going to go.
Great.
And don't just follow me. I don't
Yeah.
understand that. I'm a friendly guy. Just connect with me. It's good.
Friendliest,
Um,
friendliest, most
yeah, we'll
accessible.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll
Answer the
share and
question.
we'll build
Yeah.
great AI together.
Yeah, and like help calm the fears and like go let's do this together. It's a great opportunity. So thank you so much for your time today,
Thank
and I
you.
appreciate it. And then so we'll just put a little next week. We're going to be continuing our conversations. I'm going to be joined by Peter Genuardi, who is also another AI aficionado working to strengthen the social safety net using AI. And he's got great stories to tell. I saw it in action in November. The work that he's been doing in his organization, his company, has been amazing. So definitely tune in for that one next week. Another episode of Untangled, Thursdays at noon Eastern. I'm Jen Frazier, your host. So have a great rest of your Thursday, everyone.